The Story of an Ark. About the author, Kate Chopin. She was born on February 8, 1850 at St. Louis, Missouri, USA, and died on August 22, 1904 at the age of 54. She is novelist and short story writer. Her genre is most focused in realistic fiction. Some of her notable works are The Awakening, The Story of an Ark, The Storm, Desiree's Baby, A Pair of Silk Stockings, and At the Cajun Ball. Story of an Ark is a short story by Kate Chopin that details the emotional journey of Louise Maillard after she learns that her husband has died. After learning that her husband Brent has died in a train crash, Louise is overcome with grief. Characters. First, Maillard. The story protagonist, a woman with a heart condition who has gotten news of her husband's death in a railroad disaster. Next is Josephine, her sister, whose arm she falls when she overcome by grief by the news. Next is Brent Maillard, her husband, whose name appeared on the list of killed in a train crash. Next, Richards, the husband's friend who was in the railroad office when the telegram arrived with Maillard's name on the list of killed. The story. Knowing that Miss Maillard was afflicted with a heart trouble, great care was taken to break her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death. It was her sister Josephine who told her, in a broken sentence. Her husband's friend Richard was there too, near her. It was he who had been in the newspaper office when intelligence of the railroad disaster was received, with Brantley Maillard's name leading the list of killed. He had only taken the time to assure himself of the truth. She wept at once with sudden-wild abandonment in her sister's arms. The storm of grief had spent itself. She went away to her room alone. She would have no one follow her. There stood, facing the window, a comfortable roomy armchair. She could see in the open square before her house the tops of the trees that were all aquiver with the new spring life. The delicious breath of the rain was in the air. There were patches of blue sky showing her, and there, through the clouds that had met and piled one above the other, in the west facing her window. She sat with her head thrown back upon the cushion of the chair. Quite motionless, expect with a sob came up into her throat, and shook her, a child who was cried itself for sleep. There was something coming to her, and she was waiting for it, fearfully. What was it? She did not know. It was too subtle and exclusive to name. But she felt it, creeping out of the sky, reaching toward her through the sounds, the scent, the color that filled the air. Now, her bosom rose and fell. She was beginning to recognize these things that had approached to possess her, and she was striving to beat it back. When she abandoned herself, a little whispered word escaped her slightly parted lips. She said it over and over under her breath. Free! 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 The pulses beat fast and relaxed every inch of her body. She knew that she would weep again when she saw the kind, tender hands folded in death, the face that had never looked save with love upon her, fixed and grey and dead. But she saw beyond the bitter moment a long possession of years to come that would belong to her absolutely. She would live for herself. There would be no powerful will bending her in that blind persistence with which men and women believe that they had a right to impose a private will upon the fellow creatures. Free! Body and soul, free! She kept whispering. Josephine was kneeling before the closed door with her lips to the keyhole, imploring for admission. Louise, open the door. I beg, open the door. You will make yourself ill. What are you doing, Louise? For heaven's sake, open the door. Go away. I'm not making myself ill. Her fancy was running riot along these days ahead of her. Spring days and summer days, and all sorts of days that would be her own. She arose at length and opened the door to her sister's importunities. There was a feverish triumph in her eyes, and she cried herself like a goddess of victory. She clasped her sister's waist, and together they descended the stairs. Richard stood waiting for them at the bottom. Someone was opening the front door with a latch key. It was Brantley Maillard who entered, a little troubled state, composedly carrying his gripsack and umbrella. He had been far from the scene of the accident. He did not even know there had been one. Josephine's cry, at Richard's quick motion to screen him from the view of his wife. When the doctor came, they said she had died of heart disease, a joy that kills. Summary of the story. Mrs. Louise Maillard is at home when her sister Josephine and her husband's friend Richards come to tell her that her husband, Brantley Maillard, has been killed in a railroad accident. Richard had been at the newspaper office where the news broke, and he take Josephine with him to break the news to Louise, since they afraid of aggravating her heart condition. Upon hearing the news of her husband's death, Louise is grief-stricken, locks herself in her room, and weeps. As Louise processes the news of her husband's death, she realizes something wonderful and terrible at the same time. She is free. At first, she is scared to admit it, but Louise quickly finds peace and joy in her admission. She realized that although she will be sad about her husband, Louise is excited for the opportunity to live for herself. She keeps repeating the word free as she comes to terms with what her husband's death means for her life. In the meantime, Josephine sits at Louise's door, coaxing her to come out because she is worried about Louise's heart condition. After praying that her life is long-lived, Louise agrees to come out. However, as she comes downstairs, the front door opens to reveal her husband, who had not been killed by the accident at all. Although Richard tried to keep Louise's heart from shock by shielding her husband from view, Louise dies suddenly, which the doctors later attribute to heart disease of the joy that kills. Imagine a world where women are fighting for their rights. The economic climate is unpredictable, and new developments in technologies are made every year. It was in this world that the author Kate Chopin wrote and lived, and many of the issues of the periods are reflected in her story, The Story of an Hour. Now, over a century later, the story remains one of the Kate Chopin's most well-known works and continues to shed light on the internal struggle of women who had been denied autonomy. Symbolism. In the Story of an Hour, symbolism is everywhere, but the three major symbolism present in the story are the heart, the house and the outdoors, and joy and sorrows. First, the heart. Heart disease referred to as a heart condition within the story. It opens and closes the text. The disease is the initial cause for everyone's concern, since Louise's condition makes her delicate. Later, her heart disease caused Louise's death upon Brantley's safe return. The house and the outdoors. Her home is in a place to relax and feel comfortable. It is more like a prison cell. The outdoors symbolize freedom in the story, so it is not surprised that she realized her newfound freedom as she looked out her window. Everything outside is free, beautiful, and open. The sorrow appears as Louise mourns the death of her husband, yet, in just a few paragraphs, she found joy in the event as she discovered a life of her own.
Theme of the Story of an Hour.
One of the themes in the Story of an Hour is freedom and repression. In this story, it shows the battle between freedom and repression. We can simply put repression begins when a person's thought, feelings, or desires are being subdued. Repression can happen internally and externally. Likewise, if a person has want or need that society finds unacceptable, society can work to repress that individual. They were supposed to be gentle and passive, which often went against women's personal desires. Second is marriage. as a story of an art team is more than just an idyllic life spent with a significant other. The Mallards' marriage shows a reality of 1990s life that was familiar to many people. Marriage was a means of social control that helps keep women in check and secures men's social and political power. Moral lesson. First, marriage is complicated. One lesson that everybody can and should learn from Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour is that marriage is a very complicated relationship. Many young couples start off thinking that they will stay in love forever, but it is seldom. Second is give importance on everything you doesn't want to lose. Before it's too late, we should give importance and show love to our loved ones, for we don't know the time or the hour that they will be taken away from us.
I prepared two questions for you to answer, and please send it to my messenger. Question number one. Is Mrs. Maillard truly loved her husband? How can you say so? Question number two. What do you think is the reason it is entitled The Story of an Hour?